It's another Thunder Thursday hangout here from the Oklahoma newsroom. I'm Jenni Carlson here with part of our Thunder coverage team. I'm joined in studio by columnist Barry Tramel and Thunder beat writer Erik Horne. Brett Dawson out of pocket today doing some work, and we'll get him in here next week. But guys, let's talk about the Thunder. Off to a 6-2 start, obviously a disappointing result Wednesday night as the Raptors come to town, and a good start for the Thunder, but a double-digit loss, first home loss for the Thunder this year. DeMar DeRozan leading the NBA in scoring, has a big night for the Raptors. But Barry, you have a blog that's actually getting ready to go up here in an hour and a half, saying that in an NBA game turned in the first quarter. That doesn't happen very often, but it sure seemed to.
No, for me it did, is when Andre Roberson picked up his second foul, and it was a silly foul in the backcourt or near midcourt. Needless foul. He's got to go out. Kyle Singler starts guarding DeMar DeRozan. The Raptors' offense starts producing. DeRozan gets hot. Never got unhot the rest of the game, just a bad foul. Andre Roberson has a status on this team he's never had before. His defense is invaluable to this team, more so than in the past. He can't go making silly fouls. Russell Westbrook, Steven Adams, those guys have got to play. Andre Roberson's got to play. He can't go putting himself on the bench.
Yeah,
I came into that matchup thinking, is it really going to be the matchup that we thought it would be between DeMar DeRozan and Andre Roberson? And through the first 4 minutes, it totally was, or the first 4 possessions, rather, because DeRozan had 2 turnovers. Andre Roberson was all over him, forcing him into contested shots and bumbling the ball around. And as Barry said, once he picked up that second silly foul, you got to thinking to yourself, okay, who's going to come in and guard this guy? And Kyle Singler was the next man up. And as soon as you know it, DeMar DeRozan comes off a screen and catches an alley-oop. And, it was all downhill from there for the Thunder.
Well, and, it's interesting, guys, because, maybe as much as any player on this Thunder roster, Andre Roberson, a lightning rod for fans. It's sort of like Kendrick Perkins back in the day. No offense. Is it enough to make up for the defense? And Erik, you were in the arena last night, and you could sense that frustration by people about Andre Roberson. But after the second foul, I got to think he's probably guarding different. As Barry said, DeRozan gets going. He's hot. There's really nothing. At that point, it wouldn't have mattered who was guarding him, probably in some regards. But how much does what he's doing defensively offset offensive inefficiencies, offensive lacking offense in your mind?
It does, and even more so, from the standpoint of, he started off well offensively last night. I think he got an easy bucket in that stretch where he was guarding DeRozan before he got the 2 fouls. And then once he came back into the game, he, I guess, had lost his rhythm on both ends. And as we saw, his offense was not very good in terms of getting out on the break and converting chances. He missed a couple of layups. He got Russell Westbrook a little frustrated. And from then on, it looked like Andre Roberson was discombobulated, and DeMar DeRozan started to find his rhythm once Roberson got off the floor.
Barry, did we just have to dust off all the comments that we made about Kendrick Perkins back in the day for Andre Roberson now?
Oh, probably. I would say it's even more so now, though, because the Thunder's got to win with defense now. There's not a whole lot of times the last 7 years Durant or Westbrook have just pulled the Thunder out of the fire because they're just so phenomenal offensively. But they can't do that anymore. They've got to win with defense, and Andre Roberson is a cornerstone of that. We saw that last night. He was all over DeMar DeRozan.
Mm-hmm.
DeRozan was clearly frustrated and clearly out of sorts. Eventually, DeRozan got hot. Even on Roberson, he scored a bunch in the second half. But Roberson still made him work for those points, and when he's out, things just came so much easier. So, yeah, you're going to have to live with Andre Roberson's offense, his lack of ball handling in the open court, his lack of a shot. You're going to have to live with those things because he's just so valuable defensively.
Well, somebody, I was watching the game from home last night, but somebody on Twitter made a comment about Roberson not having any offense. I said, listen, if this guy's not on the Thunder, there's a good chance they lose the first 2 games. He had big blocks in the first 2 wins, and I believe it was maybe not the first 2, but he had a big defensive play in the home opener that they won here. 3 wins that the Thunder had could have been losses. You're talking about, people want to talk about game-winning shots, game-winning baskets. he made game-winning defensive plays that without him on the floor, does it happen? It's hard to say, but I know people want a two-way wing. I get it. I know it's what everybody in the NBA is doing, but he is so elite defensively. Now, last night, I think he did get a little out of sorts, but he's so elite defensively that I think you have to recognize just what he does on the defensive end of the court, how he can switch. I mean, we saw, and Erik, you were there for that Clippers game. He guarded Chris Paul and did a fantastic job guarding Chris Paul in a variety of ways.
Yeah. Last couple of minutes in that Clippers game, I mean, he was instrumental in allowing Russell Westbrook to do what he did offensively. And I mean, Roberson getting out and deflecting the ball, Russell Westbrook getting away with it and going down and scoring on the break. But yeah, Andre Roberson has been a critical defensive piece, and I think it makes it easier for people to swallow what he does defensively when he is converting his offensive chances, and that's what made it so frustrating last night in the building.
Did you had mentioned Russell Westbrook. Did you sense frustration out of Westbrook when it comes to Roberson?
I don't know if it was particularly Roberson or just the state of the team in general and how the game was going. I mean, he was getting double teamed at times on the wing. Roberson wasn't finishing his chances. Westbrook himself didn't finish his chances, and it led to Toronto points on the other end. And it's probably the most frustrated we've seen Westbrook this early in the season, considering he's been pretty good in terms of his temperament. Even after the Golden State game, he was like, it's just another game. He didn't really seem frustrated within the course of the game to me. But tonight was the first, I mean, not tonight, but Wednesday night were the first signs that, we've seen that traditional Westbrook frustration going to the bench, kind of shaking his head and things of that nature.
And we saw it in his play on the court.
Yeah.
I mean, down the stretch, he took 2 or 3 3-pointers that were clearly, I don't care about this game anymore.
Yeah.
Just,
Right.
30-pointers. So he can't do that. That Russell Westbrook, you could sort of live with it in the past. He can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And he's been great so far up to this point as far as team leadership, but he's got to continue that. He can't revert to that just going half-cocked on a stretch of basketball.
And credit Toronto's defense too, because they were playing without their starting center, yet they were able to throw a lot of long bodies at Russell Westbrook on that sideline to where the Thunder's guys on the backside were kind of standing around waiting like, oh, they kind of didn't know what to do in those instances, and Westbrook said, well, I'm just going to do it myself if nobody's going to give me the assistance. So it goes hand in hand. I think the Thunder's players, besides Westbrook, have to help him out more on the offensive end when it comes to those things, and then Westbrook's got to make better decisions when it comes to pulling up from three and taking some errant shots. 3 for 12 from three, can't have that, bro.
We talk about the frustration not really showing before this Raptors game. So much talk about the Raptors and what DeRozan has done offensively, all his scoring. Obviously, Kyle Lowry, super talented on the offensive end as well. But is this partially, sort of what you were talking about, Erik, is this a result of maybe the Raptors are even better defensively than they might get credit for? And there's maybe not a ton of teams that can do some of the things that they did defensively to Russell Westbrook and the Thunder on Wednesday night?
Well, I think a lot of what happened to the Thunder on Wednesday was self-inflicted. I mean, you get out to that 12-0 lead, and then the second unit can't really keep it together when Adams and Westbrook go out with about 2 minutes left in the first quarter, and that's when the Raptors really started to make their run. In addition to the things we talked about with Andre Roberson and DeMar DeRozan getting in rhythm. But the Raptors, I think I might have undersold how good they were too, because going into this game they hadn't really had those marquee wins, but they played a close game against Cleveland and they lost to Cleveland by about 2 points. So I think I might have undersold the Raptors going into this game too, particularly without their starting center Jonas Valanciunas, and he was averaging a double-double.
Right.
So I think it goes a little bit of both. I think I undersold the Raptors myself, and I think the Thunder just didn't play their best game offensively.
Well, I think also the Raptors coming off a not great performance at Sacramento, a loss on Monday night. It's one of those it sort of felt a little bit like when Phoenix came to town. They were coming off a really poor performance, and you could sort of see them elevate their game. But I wonder, Barry, this idea of Russell's frustrations sort of rearing their ugly head for the first time. Is this just a situation where, everything about this team is really a learning process? That this is one of those times that, Russell Westbrook has to see, that isn't going to work if I do that again. Is this just another learning situation for this team?
Oh, I think so. I think Billy Donovan probably spent a lot of time with the film room today with showing his guys some of those plays. Russell was clearly frustrated. You mentioned not finishing. He was not getting good elevation when he got to the rim and sort of got under the rim a couple of times. And, he was frustrated with Roberson not finishing. A couple of his passes didn't get through. You show those things and say, hey, listen, guys, this is the stuff we can't do. This is what it means. It means transition offense for the Raptors or whoever else we're playing. We got to play smart. We got to play. We can play aggressive. We can play tough. We can play fast. But you got to play smart, and you got to play with a sound mind, or this team can't be successful.
Maybe Russell Westbrook was just like a lot of us on Wednesday. We stayed up late Tuesday night. There was a presidential election. Felt a little off our game on Wednesday. I don't know. Maybe it was just a bad day for Russell Westbrook. Let me remind folks that you're watching our Thunder Thursday hangout here from the Oklahoma newsroom, from the News OK studios. And Bear, you mentioned Billy Donovan a second ago, breaking down film from that Raptors game. Let's talk about Donovan here for a second. What is happening with rotations? 12 guys played in the first half against the Raptors. Are we just seeing sort of attempts at seeing what happens with a ton of different stuff, or what's going on here?
Yeah, I detected some experimentation last night. You saw Anthony Morrow and Kyle Singler get in the game early. You saw Jeremy Grant come in late in the second quarter. So it was that we hadn't seen much of that since Grant arrived. Singler's been off to the side. Morrow hasn't played much, but 12 guys used in the first quarter last night. That to me was odd. You said that Donovan after the game just said he wanted to see Kyle Singler, give him a chance to play. But I think Billy's still a long way from sorting out that rotation with Grant new, not really knowing exactly what he wants to do.
Yeah, and I think he's mentioned that before, that he's going to continue to, give guys opportunities to show what they can do and see what kind of lineups he can put out there. I think I wouldn't say it was a bad move by Donovan, but I think that he might have miscalculated the impact of DeMar DeRozan getting hot in that stretch. I mean, I think they went up 16-4, and when he brought in Kyle Singler, and maybe you see a Jeremy Grant in that situation the next time it comes around, because we know that Kyle Singler hasn't had a great year. He hasn't had a great career with the Thunder so far, and he's had struggles defending guys, and he fouls at a high rate. So, Donovan pointed to Kyle Singler's length, and he's always pointed to Kyle Singler's length as something that gives him that advantage on defense. Well, guess what? Jeremy Grant's 6'8" too, and he's really long. Mm-hmm. So, that's another guy that you could throw at a small forward / shooting guard like DeMar DeRozan, who's a 6'7", and maybe he can be that physical presence and kind of get a little bit closer to that Andre Roberson caliber defense that we're used to.
For all of the experimentation that happened Wednesday night, and probably, for the stretch of the season, we've seen Billy Donovan doing a variety of things. One thing that has not changed at all, and we didn't know before the season how it would be, is the starting lineup. And he's stuck with those 5. Is this locked in? Do you guys feel like these are the 5 he's going to go with, or are we going to see at some point maybe some changes in the starting lineup?
Oh, I think you'll see this lineup as the everyday lineup all year long. For one thing, it's been effective.
Yeah.
It's been really good. Sabonis is turning into a player right before our very eyes. We've talked about Roberson and his defensive value, and Victor Oladipo, who was mentioned as perhaps a possible 6th man. I think that there's not enough scoring on that starting lineup if you don't use Oladipo from the start. He's been playing really well. We've been able to see what Victor and Russell together can be, and it's fairly promising. So I like the starting lineup and where it's going. I think they gotta work on that bench now.
We'll get to the bench in a second, because that is a question. But when you look, Eric, at what Oladipo has done to kind of get going after some early struggles, and when you look at Sabonis really starting to flourish, what do you pinpoint as the reasons why? Are those guys just getting comfortable? Have they found some different ways to try to utilize them to bring that comfort level up? What are you seeing out of those two?
Well, I think that Oladipo has played out of control at times. Barry's mentioned this before. His shot selection hasn't been great. Mm-hmm. I don't have a problem with him taking that wide open three-pointer, that spot-up three-pointer, and him missing it. That's fine. But if he gets that shot, he needs to take it. Shot selection with him, I think in the Miami game, he played a much more controlled game. He wasn't making those wild runs to the basket, and he was kind of slowing down in transition when the defense would collapse on him, and kind of surveying the floor and seeing where he can get his shot from. To me, that was a comfort thing for him. And Sabonis, it really just came down to him just being able to stay on the floor in certain instances. He fouled like crazy against the Clippers, and we'll see tomorrow if that continues, because he had a really hard time with Blake Griffin, who we know is just a tremendous player, and he's going to give anybody trouble.
Yeah.
But in terms of Sabonis staying on the floor in his foul trouble situation, I mean, I talked to Nick Carlson, and he said that that's just a thing that rookies go through. Steven Adams had a hard time staying on the floor in terms of his fouls when he was a rookie. And from that Clippers game on, I think Sabonis has shown a lot of strides in terms of being able to play with his foul situation and not accumulating as many. Mm-hmm. And as we know, his three-point shot has come along a lot in the past 2 or 3 games as well. And when he's shooting the ball well, you got to have him out there.
Barry, you liking Oladipo's shot selection more?
Yeah, I thought, Eric mentioned Monday night, very good against Miami. I thought he was one of the bright spots last night. Had a nice game. He seems more aware of shot selection these last few games. He seems to sense a rhythm. I like his defense. I'm liking more and more about everything I see about Victor Oladipo.
Something I noticed the other night, I covered the Monday night game, which now the opponents, the Heat. Darnell Mayberry, our colleague here who covered the Thunder for a lot of years, he and I were talking about Oladipo and the fact that he's a good three-point shooter, but he's not a spot-up three-point shooter, and it seemed like he was he was getting, sort of pointed in that direction, that he's so good with the ball in his hands, but obviously he's on the floor with Russell Westbrook. So sort of how do you work that out? But it seems to me that in certain situations that you're seeing the Thunder get the ball in his hands a little bit more. Let him be the guy that drives. He had a little floater in the second half of that game on Monday night that was really his creation. And if he can get some confidence, playing some with that second unit too, he's had the ball in his hands some while he's on the floor with Samaje Christian, which just I think then builds the confidence that maybe the ball's not in his hands when Russell Westbrook's out there, but he's started to sort of feel better about himself and maybe he's going to knock down shots more in those situations. So I've seen some definite move in the right direction with him because I, like you guys, was a little bit concerned. Could he be that second offensive option? I think he's getting there. I don't know if he's as evolved to this point as they want him to be or need him to be, but he's definitely pointed in the right direction. Let's talk bench for a second, Barry. You brought that up. Seems like that may be emerging as a concern. I mean, I think outside shooting will continue to be a concern with this team. But what's your level of concern about the bench right now, Barry?
High, very high. They don't have a lot of defensive acumen. They don't have a lot of firepower. Enes Kanter comes off the bench. Everybody knows he can produce, but you're seeing more and more when Kanter gets the ball with that second unit, it's a double team every time. They're making him get rid of it. Sometimes he manages a good pass. Sometimes it's a takeaway. It's not going well. I think that's probably why we saw Anthony Morrow come into the game. Billy thinking, I got to try to get some more offense out there. But with Samaje Christian, with Jeremy Grant, with Laverne, you've got guys that are just, not real good scorers. And I think that bench, at least until Cameron Payne returns, I think that bench is going to be a concern.
Yeah, Cameron Payne's return is going to be critical to me. And, I mean, they got to have another guy that can create shots off of that bench, especially when Russell Westbrook comes off the floor. It just seems like the team just falls back so much when Westbrook and Adams are off the floor. And a lot of that falls on Enes Kanter. And we've seen him at times, he's played pick and roll well. He's done well on help defense. I think he had a couple of bright spots last night in terms of being able to help on DeRozan and some of those guys that were driving. But Enes Kanter's been inconsistent in terms of his defensive play. A lot of people want him on the floor because he's a great offensive player, but when he gets the ball in the post and he's turning it over within the first 2 or 3 possessions, that's a caution flag, and that says to Billy Donovan that I got to get this guy out of here before things get out of control. Because if he's not going to produce on the offensive end, then we know points are going to get given up on the defensive end.
Yeah.
And Kanter's going to have a test on Friday night against the Clippers, who while he had 12 boards against them last game, he didn't play particularly well.
Well, you mentioning the Clippers, let's move right on to looking ahead here a little bit, guys. The month of November is just chock full of home games. It seems like every other night is the routine here. Wednesday night was the Raptors. Now Friday night the Clippers. Then a Sunday night game against the Orlando Magic. The return of Serge Ibaka. On the road for a back-to-back Monday night at Detroit. But then next week you've got Houston at home on Wednesday. Nets at home on Friday. Pacers at home on Sunday. So this conglomeration of home games. What's a realistic record there? We listed off 6 games. The Thunder need, 4-2. Would that be good, or do you see is there a higher threshold there, Eric?
You know, that Rockets game becomes increasingly more intriguing and difficult to me, the way that James Harden is playing. I mean, he's really...
It's DeRozan-esque a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, just the way he's facilitating. I mean, he's averaged double-digit assists. He's had a couple of 15-assist games. James Harden is a strong MVP candidate right now with the way that he's facilitating that Houston offense. So, I mean, I think you can go on the road and get that Detroit game. You'd imagine they'd beat the Magic, and then... You know, the Clippers, that's a toss-up with the way that the Clippers are playing. Pacers are a good team, too. So,
right.
I mean, I guess 4-2 or 3-3 would be realistic in this stretch.
What about it, Barry?
Oh, yeah, you know, I'm doing the same thing. When I looked at these 5 games in 9 days, all at home, I thought, you know, 4-1 would be a great record. It's awfully early, though, to be worried too much about a record.
Yeah.
You know, we really don't know how good the Thunder is, how good they can be. We don't really know who's actually going to stand out in the league. We know the Warriors and the Spurs and the Cavs are going to be great, but you know when you talk about teams like the Rockets, the Blazers, the Jazz, the Grizzlies, I mean we don't really know what kind of team. Are those 50-win teams? Are they 40-win teams? We don't know. So to me, it's fun to look at the record. I mean, if they can go 4-2 in that 6-game stretch, that's fantastic.
Be 10-4 at that point.
10-4 at some point in the season is wonderful.
Yeah.
However, it really doesn't mean much if they make it, and it doesn't mean much if they don't. It's more how they're playing. Are they still committed to defense? Are they still, is Russell Westbrook still playing at an incredible level? Those kinds of things. Is Adams progressing? Is Sabonis turning into a player? Those are the things that matter more when you get into what kind of team you'll be in February and March. The record, not so much.
Yeah, and I'm not overly concerned if they don't, get to the end of next week and have 9 or 10 wins. But if you're talking about playoffs, which this team, I think we can all safely say they've got the ability to be a playoff team. I think that was a question coming into the year. Where would they be in terms of the West? And I think it's pretty clear they do have the ability to be a playoff team. So you want to set yourself up as well as possible. And having all these home games, you just don't want to get to the end of the year and go, man, we had all those home games in November and we weren't where we are now, but man, if we could have won 1 more, 2 more. I mean, you don't want to get to a point where you're thinking that at the end of the year.
And not just that they're home games too, and I think that's big considering that they have that January stretch where they're going to be going on the road for a month against good teams, but you got home games and road games against teams that are still trying to figure themselves out this month.
Right.
I mean, the Lakers are a great story right now, but that's a team that the Thunder should sweep in this first month. I mean, they've already beat them once. They're going on the road against them next week. They got Sacramento as well on that road trip. They got Denver. I mean, those are teams that you got to get now to where you can give yourself some equity going into January.
Yeah, definitely so. All right, guys. Lots of games coming up, lots more to talk about, but that's it for this Thunder Thursday. Be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.